At exactly 8:46 a.m., the world learned what fire looks like when it falls from the sky. But what most people don't know, what almost no one has ever been shown, is that something else was already there, watching long before the first impact, long before the screams, long before history cracked open. There exists footage from September 11th that was never meant to be seen, angles that were never released, frames that vanished into classified vaults, because what appeared in those seconds didn't fit any official explanation. Not smoke, not debris, not aircraft, something else, something aware. For over 2 decades, the story of 9/11s has been told in a single direction, tightly controlled, carefully repeated, drilled into collective memory until questions themselves felt dangerous. 2 planes, 2 towers, terrorism, collapse, end of story. But history is never that clean, especially when thousands of cameras were rolling at once: news crews, tourists, rooftop security feeds, private helicopters, experimental military satellites, and classified surveillance systems already monitoring New York's skyline that morning for reasons still unexplained. When you stitch together what was captured and, more importantly, what was removed, a very different pattern begins to form. In the hours after the attacks, government agencies moved with unprecedented speed, not just to secure the site, but to seize media. Local stations were ordered to hand over raw tapes. Helicopter pilots were questioned, grounded, and sworn to silence. A French documentary crew, filming a routine piece on NYC firefighters, was quietly escorted out of the country with their footage confiscated. Officials claimed it was to protect national security, but insiders later whispered something far more unsettling. The tapes showed things that shouldn't exist. One clip, briefly aired and then erased, came from a camera positioned across the river in New Jersey. At first glance, it looked like heat distortion, and it didn't. As the first tower burned, something moved within the smoke. Not falling, not drifting, moving with intention. It shifted direction against the wind, paused, then vanished straight upward at impossible speed. The cameraman reportedly lowered the camera and said, "What the hell was that?" That sentence never made it to broadcast. Another piece of footage came from a private rooftop camera near Battery Park. Security systems, like this, were designed to record continuously, frame by frame, time-stamped and uncompressed. When investigators later accessed the feed, they found a gap. Exactly 17 seconds, missing right as the second plane struck. The system hadn't malfunctioned. The hard drive logs showed a manual overwrite. Someone had accessed the system remotely, using credentials that didn't belong to the building owner, and erased only those seconds. Nothing before, nothing after, just the impact, and whatever else was there. Years later, a former intelligence contractor spoke anonymously to a European journalist. He claimed that within minutes of the first impact, a classified alert was triggered inside a NORA deal-linked monitoring system, not for hijacked aircraft, but for unidentified aerial phenomena entering restricted airspace above Manhattan. According to him, the objects were not tracked as planes. They had no transponders, no conventional propulsion signatures, and they didn't behave like drones. They hovered near the towers, dipped into the smoke, then accelerated vertically beyond radar range. Officially, no such alert exists. Unofficially, multiple retired radar technicians have hinted at ghost tracks, that morning objects that appeared, disappeared, then reappeared miles away in fractions of a second. These tracks were deleted within hours. Not flagged, deleted. But the most disturbing footage never came from radar or satellites. It came from the ground in 2013. A video surfaced briefly on an obscure forum, before being taken down under a copyright claim traced back to a defense contractor. The clip was grainy, shot on early digital equipment, and appeared to be taken from inside a building across from the South Tower. As the tower burns, the camera zooms into the smoke-filled upper floors. That's when you see it. A dark, elongated shape, partially obscured, moving horizontally inside the smoke, too large to be debris, too controlled to be fire. Then, for 3 frames, it turns. It doesn't reflect light like metal. It absorbs it. Those 3 frames have been analyzed endlessly by independent researchers. The shape appears symmetrical, not mechanical in any recognizable way, almost organic. And worst of all, it seems to react to the camera, shifting position just as the zoom stabilizes, as if aware it's being observed. After that, the footage cuts abruptly. No fade. No explanation. Skeptics call it pareidolia. Smoke tricks. Compression artifacts. But the problem is this. Similar shapes appear in at least 7 other recordings from completely different angles, cameras, and distances, all during the same window of time, all later removed or degraded in official archives. Coincidence stops being a defense when patterns emerge, so why would something like this be there? One theory suggests observation, not intervention, watching, studying human response to catastrophe. The towers, after all, were more than buildings. They were symbols of global finance, human ambition, interconnected systems. Their destruction sent shockwaves not just through cities, but through markets, politics, and collective psychology worldwide. If a non-human intelligence wanted to study large-scale human stress events, this was a perfect data point. Another theory is far darker. Some researchers believe the presence wasn't passive, that whatever was seen in the smoke wasn't just observing the collapse, it was influencing it. There are engineers who still question how both towers fell so symmetrically, so rapidly, despite being struck at different locations, with different damage profiles, while official explanations cite fire-induced structural failure. Classified analyses purportedly explored unknown energetic factors detected during collapse, brief spikes in radiation that didn't match explosives, fires, or any known building materials. Those reports were sealed. Then there's the testimony of first responders. Firefighters who survived the collapse later described moments that don't align with standard physics. Sudden pressure drops. Air pulled violently inward. A deep, low-frequency vibration felt in the chest rather than heard. One responder said it felt like standing next to something breathing. His statement was removed from the official oral history transcripts. Police helicopters also reported anomalies. One pilot, speaking years later under condition of anonymity, said their instruments briefly went dead as they circled the towers. Not jammed, not malfunctioning, just blank. Visual contact was maintained, but radar, altitude readings, and comms all dropped simultaneously for several seconds. When systems returned, the aircraft had shifted position without any corresponding movement felt by the crew. And then there are the satellite images. Commercial satellites weren't the only eyes in orbit that day. Classified platforms capable of hyperspectral imaging were already watching the eastern seaboard due to unrelated military exercises. Those satellites would have captured data far beyond visible light, infrared, ultraviolet, and frequencies the public never sees. According to leaked summaries, analysts noted localized distortions above the towers before and during collapse, areas where light bent, where heat signatures didn't behave normally, where something appeared to occupy space. Without mass, those images have never been released. The government insists nothing unusual occurred beyond the attacks themselves. And yet, year after year, requests for raw, unedited footage are denied under national security exemptions. Even decades later, even when the technology is obsolete, even when every other detail has been declassified. Why protect images if they show nothing? Because once people see it, you can't put it back. Imagine realizing that during one of humanity's darkest moments, we weren't alone. That something stood above the smoke, indifferent to our suffering, recording us the way we record ants during a flood. Or worst, that it had been here long before, waiting for moments like this. Drawn to intensity, chaos, and collapse. Some believe 9/11 wasn't the first time this happened. Just the first time it was caught on camera, accidentally, imperfectly, and just long enough for the truth to slip through the cracks before being buried. Today, fragments still surface. A frame here, a corrupted file there, always removed, always dismissed, always just short of proof. But when you line them up, when you ignore the labels and look only at the data, a silent question remains, hanging in the smoke where the towers once stood. What if the footage was buried not to protect us from panic, but to protect us from understanding that we were never as alone as we thought, and that something has been watching us all along, waiting for the next moment when the world breaks open enough for it to be seen again? And if that's true, the real question isn't what was watching on September 11th, it's whether it's still watching now.